Let's explore some large numbers. You remember last year in grade 5, you learned about some pretty big numbers. You went all the way up to 1,000,000. Well, we are going to start the year hitting hard with even bigger numbers, and we're going to go beyond 1,000,000. So let's use the textbook to help us learn about exploring these even bigger numbers than we learned about last year. So the Guinness World Records is it is the world's all-time best-selling book. So in our textbook, it tells us that from October 1955 to June 2002, a huge amount were sold. This big number right here that I'm highlighting on my screen. And that number is so huge, sometimes it might be hard to even think about what it really means. So it is actually 94,767,083. It's a pretty big number. And they're asking us in the textbook to suppose the number is written in the place value chart. Where would the digits 9 and 4 appear? So I'm going to give you guys a second to think about that. And then I will show you how we figure it out. So take a second and think, where would the digits 9 and 4 appear in this place value chart? If you said that 9 would go in the 10 millions and 4 would go in the millions, then you got it right. And if you're not sure how we came to that answer, let me teach you a little trick that we can do. We can start at the very right, the very last digit in the number. That's going to be our ones. We don't have a decimal, so we know we don't have any tenths, hundredths, or thousandths, or even bigger than that, smaller actually than that. Our smallest number is our 1. It's on the very right-hand side. It's the last number. We would place that in our ones column, okay? And then we could just go to the next number in line. That's an 8. It stands for 80, and that's going to go in the tens column. The digit in the hundreds column is a 0. That's a placeholder telling us there are no hundreds in this number. And then our next number is a 7. That's going in our thousandths. The 6 goes in the 10,000s. Another 7 goes in the 100,000s. And then we get to our 4 and our 9. 4 goes in the millions, and 9 goes in the 10 millions. So that's one way that we can fill in a place value chart. Just start with the smallest and work your way left, and then you know you're not going to make a mistake. If I started by putting the 9 here in the 100 millions, I would get all the way down, and I would have a 3 in the tens. But I only have 3 single units, not 30. So I would have made a mistake. I would have made that whole number bigger by a factor of 10. I would have multiplied the whole thing by 10. So it's important that when we do this, if we're filling in place value chart, we start with the smallest number. Okay, let's move on a little bit. In the Explore section, we have a bunch of records that are laid out for us here. Excuse me. And then we're challenged to choose 2 numbers from the records and show each number in as many ways as we can. So I decided I would do an example for you. And I'm going to take this number about the longest gum wrapper chain because I'm just fascinated by that. First of all, it's huge. That's a person who ate at least 1 million pieces of gum and saved the wrappers to make them into a chain. And it's also someone who worked on it from 1965 until 2008. That's more than 40 years of working on a gum wrapper chain. That's just amazing to me. So that's the number I'm going to pick. I'm going to express that number in 3 different ways. I'm going to do it right here in this Google form. So I'm going to start with, with standard form. Let me just delete that slide because we're not using it. And for this, I'm actually going to, because I'm using Google Forms instead of writing it down, I'm just going to paste it in here because it was already in standard form. Standard form just means the form that's standard, which means the way we always write numbers. So this is our standard form. You'll notice in this, I've grouped all the numbers into chunks of 3. So 492, 192,000, 1 million. Okay, and the reason for that is it just makes it a lot easier for us to read and to know and to understand the place value when we chunk them into groups of 3. So that is standard, that our numbers are chunked into groups of 3. Chunking them by leaving a space is not the most standard. It's one way that's done. It's the way our textbook is done. So that's what we will do. But many people will chunk these numbers into chunks of 3 by using a comma. So that's probably the most common way of doing it. And I'm totally fine with it if that's how you want to do it. Just know that our textbook says that we are supposed to split those numbers out with a space. Okay. And when we get to the end of the year and we are working on preparing for our provincial achievement tests, we may want you to go to this standard form with the spaces in case that is what is required of you on the test, and also because that is how the test will be written. So it's important that we understand that way of doing it. Commas are okay. That's very commonly used, but for our purposes, the spaces are used. Now, one key thing, and that was why I had that other number there, was if we only had a number that had 4 digits, let's say 2,492. At some point, this chain of gum wrappers did only consist of 2,492. Do you see how I did not leave a space there in those 4 numbers, those 4 digits? Okay, that number 2,492 can be written with 4 digits without a space. But after a few more years, that person actually worked until they had gotten it to 92,492. Now my number has 5 digits in it, and I do need to put the space in to show the grouping of numbers of 3. Okay, that's also explained in the textbook pages that you're going to read for me today. So 1,192,492 standard form, the normal way of writing numbers. Expanded form, now think back to grade 5, and you also did it in grade 4 with smaller numbers. This is where we break down each place in the place value table and add it to the next place in the place value table. So I'm going to start with 1 million. 1 million. That number has 6 zeros in it. And I'm going to do plus. I have to do 100,000 plus 90,000 plus 2,000. I don't need to leave the space there because it's only 4 digits. Plus 400 plus 90 plus 2. So that is expanded form. It's long. But it's important to know. We have to know how to break those numbers up and express them in expanded form as well, because that is really how we tie it to our place value chart. Another way that we can write numbers is in written form. Okay, some people call this cardinal numbers, but we're just going to say written form. It's written out. Okay, so in this case, there's a couple of rules we're going to have to follow, and we'll talk about those. I'm going to write my number out. 2,492. I have 292. So let's look at this. I'm going to put it in big screen. 1,192,492. You'll notice I did not use the word and there anywhere. Okay, I didn't say 1,192,492. I'm not wasting letters to write and twice in there. Okay, it's written form. I don't want to write any more words than I have to because it's already a lot, right? The other thing you will notice is the hyphen in the 92. We have the 92 in this number twice, but any number between 21 and 99, you have to put that hyphen in there. So if I was writing 34, I would write 30-4. If I was writing 59, 50-9, okay? Even when it's 759,000. It's still 59, still has the hyphen. Okay, so that's just a little rule we have to remember. Now, again, it's a lot of work writing it out in long form, and the bigger in written form. The bigger the number gets, the more work it is. So we don't do it often, but we do have to know how to do it. We do have to know how to read it and understand it. So that's why we learn it. All right, so that's my lesson for today. Your work now is going to be to go back to Google Classroom and check the pages in the textbook that I asked you to read. Make sure you go and read them and understand them. If you have questions while you're doing your reading, write them down in your math notebook and bring them to our Google Meet tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. After you have read the textbook pages, work on the practice exercises. Again, check Google Classroom for the specific practice exercises I want you to do. If you get those done and you want to do more, go ahead and do more. More practice is always better. And again, if you get really stuck on something and you have a question, bring that with you to our Wednesday Google Meet. We'll take up the answers and I'll answer all your questions. Then on Wednesday, there's going to be a new video lesson for you and more stuff for you to work on Wednesday and Thursday. So enjoy working with these big numbers, have lots of fun with math, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, sixes.